Hello, welcome to 30-Minute Mindfulness. Today I thought we'd talk about authenticity a little bit and just kind of what that is. And authenticity is one of the things that counters shame. It shows our true humanity, not that perfect side of us. It shows the real, honest human side, the scars and the fears. The vulnerability that comes from authenticity is what feeds connection with others. That's what really, it shows we see each other's humanity, and that's what makes us feel that sense of connection. To say honestly, I'm really struggling with anger right now. I've sat with this anger for a while, and I'm writing about it. I'm considering it in my meditation time, and I've really come to understand that I'm really feeling afraid of failing. I'm afraid I'm going to fall flat on my face, that no one's going to hear me, that I'm never going to make enough money to quit this day job. It feels really awful. That's what's going on for me. That is a real conversation. That's vulnerable. That builds connection. It builds trust. It gives my trusted friend on the other side of my conversation the opportunity to reach toward me, to sit with me in my challenging time, to see my realness. That person on the other side of the conversation shows authenticity first by showing empathy, tapping into those feelings of anger and fear in herself, those feelings that live inside of her. That sense of, yeah, I get it. Me too. That gives the person that who's stuck in the fires of life a sense that they're not alone. Two humans walking next to each other on equal footing. Brené Brown says, if you trade authenticity for safety, you may experience the following: anxiety, depression, eating disorders, addiction, rage, blame, resentment, and inexplicable grief. What she means is that if we're unwilling to be honest with ourselves, and we're not capable of living from that place of being who we're really meant to be, we're cutting off parts of who we are. We're giving up pieces of who we are to gain acceptance or love or money or prestige or whatever it is. So that translates to we're giving up our authentic self to appease the world. That disparity, that cutting off parts of who we are, causes grave dysfunction and unrest, which is where that anxiety, depression, and addictions all come into play. When we put on this pretense of being perfect out into the world, that's also not authentic. And it creates huge isolation because our perfection alienates others. People feel more inadequate in the presence of somebody who appears to have it all together, who appears to be perfect. They don't see the humanness, the realness. They don't see the person's authenticity, which is the thing that makes us feel safe, the thing that builds connection. We may admire that perfect person from afar to some degree, but something feels off. They don't feel real. They're not. So remember, the person who believes they're perfect or portrays this perfect, picture of who they are, they're caught by their own illusion. This is a dysfunction that protects them from seeing what they don't want to see. Their imperfection, their humanity. They're protected from seeing that by this guise of perfection. And that cycle is what creates their own isolation. When we hide from who we are, shame is often the driving force. Shame is also at the forefront when we sacrifice our needs by saying yes when we'd rather say no, when we make acceptance more important than authenticity. Shame creates barriers to authentic communication, and it contaminates our relationships by trying to control others, criticizing, blaming, or denying what's really there. Shame causes withdrawal. We withdraw from connection. We withdraw from experiences to hang out with other people. And shame also develops opportunity. Shame is the force behind those empty promises. We appease a person in the moment with these empty promises, and then in that same sense that we're appeasing them, we're trying to convince ourselves that we're good enough, that we can do it. And then when we don't follow through, we become more entrenched in that shame that created the false promise in the first place. So it creates another negative feedback loop. For most of us, our self-doubt has become a way of life, and we don't really question the harmful effects or the subtle places that it shows up. It may be difficult to even determine where our wants, needs, and desires are if we don't pay attention to them. And we also have these memorized patterns of behavior that fit us into the mold we're supposed to be. As we fit into this mold, to some degree, we're sacrificing the freedom of who we really are. We sacrifice our ability to be vulnerable because we're no longer living from our authentic self. We're living from that role that others believe we should be living. When we live inauthentic, we stop risking being ourselves. We more deeply become entrenched by our self-defeating behaviors, because when we're not living authentically, that's cutting off those pieces of who we are. That's shoving them down in the shadows. No, that's not real. No, I don't want to look at that. No, that's not really what I want to do. I want to be this. I'm going to do this for my career because that's what I'm supposed to do. That's where I make more money. That's not my passion, but it's a good career. Those are all ways that we show up in inauthentic ways with the world, with ourselves. Brené Brown says, authenticity is the daily practice of letting go who we think we are supposed to be and embracing who we are. Authenticity requires courage. It requires willingness to stick out our necks, to risk being rejected and criticized and judged. Taking that healthy risk to be authentic feeds our self-esteem. It fuels that drive in that drive that we can do it, that drive of, wow, look at that, I did it. It fuels that. Getting to the other side of that scary, fearful place of stepping into the arena allows you to see your truth. You see your truth through those dangers, and you create a steadfast belief in who you are, what you stand for, your strength, your cause, and your willingness to show up as your authentic self. So the more we show up as our authentic self, the more we see how beneficial it is to step into that, and the more we love it and the more we want it. There's no argument that rejection and loss hurt immensely. But the choice to stay safe over being authentic is a type of slow suffocation. It's killing off who you really are from the inside. And it leads us to a mountain of hardships, like we've already talked about, with depression and anxiety and more. So when we show up authentically and get into that arena, even though we're afraid and vulnerable, we're training ourselves to becoming our best self. We're in training to become that. Our authenticity is what we put here to develop. It's our truth. It's our cause. We're not born pro. We become pro. We don't step into the arena the first time and hit a home run. It takes hours and hours and hours of beating on our craft to become pro. It takes grit. Every time we get into the arena, we show ourselves what we're made of. We are showing ourselves what it means to live as our authentic self. Our light shines from within. That is our authentic self, our authentic nature. It's why you're here. Authenticity is your gift to the world, so shine brightly. As Dr. Seuss reminds us, today you are you. That is truer than true. There's nobody else youer than you. And that's our cue to shine brightly, to remember who we are, to live authentically. So with that, I ask you to find a posture as we sit for about 20 minutes and we cultivate our own authenticity. So find a posture that's comfortable, something that's upright but not rigid. And just take a couple deep breaths to bring you to this present moment. Remember, there's nothing magical about our breath. It's simply an anchor that pulls us back to the present moment. That steady flow of in and out. It's just a detail of life that brings us right here, right now. As we reflect on authenticity, is there any places or situations or relationships where you struggle to show up authentically? What situations are difficult for you to show up with your authentic self? When you think about that sense of inauthenticity, what does that feel like to sit with that? That sense of not being authentic. How do you feel it in your body? Do you feel tightness or maybe heat rising in your neck or your palms? Maybe you feel it in your tummy. Where is it in your body? That feeling of not being authentic. If that feeling of inauthenticity, if it had a voice, what would it say to you? What does that sense want you to know? Is that sense afraid? Is it scary to be vulnerable in that way? To put out your creativity or to put out your true thoughts or feelings? Is that scary? Is it fear? Is it anger? What is it? What does that inauthenticity want you to know? What's underneath? Maybe fear of rejection. Maybe it's learned behavior from the past because of so much rejection. This is safer. It's safer to choose not to express my authentic self. Whatever arises, whatever it is that it's telling you, just let's sit with that for just a minute. And now, is it possible to look at that fear or that fear of vulnerability or whatever it is that's arising, and just notice that that's okay. Yeah, I'm scared. I feel fear. Acknowledge it. It's here. It's human. And then to the degree that we can we just open the door for the possibility of doing a little bit of work towards authentic expression, to showing up a little bit more authentically in that situation or that circumstance? Can we breathe into that fear and say, yes, I see you. Yes, you're real. And continue walking forward. Just a little bit. We're just pushing that edge to reach that vulnerability. We got to get a little bit uncomfortable, and then we push our edge out. As you consider that authentic approach, that authentic embodying your authenticity, without a story about how or why or when, but just the experience of being authentic. What does that feel like? Just feel what it is to have that freedom of that authentic expression of who you are. Completely you, completely real. And what does that feel like in your body? Where do you feel it? Maybe your tummy or your throat, or maybe it's tingling in your hands. Where does your body hold that authentic expression of who you are? Being authentic is being real. It's being who you are intended to be. Being authentic creates peace and well-being because we develop a sense of ease around how we present ourselves to the world. We are who we are. May we walk forward today with a more authentic sense of who we are. May we understand the value of putting forth our authentic nature. And may we find the courage to step into the arena of life, with our authentic story. And when you're ready, please open your eyes. Thanks so much for being here today. Shine brightly. That's what you're intended to do. Thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow.